Welcome back, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're jumping straight into a truly fascinating explainer. Today, we're unpacking a highly structured theological and sociological framework on marriage. It comes from Pastor Mrs. Mercy Akeke, PhD, and her talk titled The Tears of a Woman: Negative and Positive Impacts. It offers a very specific, deeply interesting lens on marital reciprocity, the sheer weight of emotional intelligence, and the spiritual consequences of the things we do behind closed doors. So whether you're already super familiar with these concepts or you're just curious about how traditional marital frameworks are constructed, there is a whole lot to unpack here about how these duties shape human connection. Let's get into it. Now, to really grasp this framework, we have to start with the foundational stakes. And trust me, they are high. Dr. Akeke anchors her entire analysis in this really powerful scriptural warning from the book of Malachi: do not deal treacherously with the wife of your youth. You see, in her framework, this isn't just some casual piece of advice. It is an absolute mandate. It literally sets the tone for everything else we're going to cover today. The core idea here is that marital behavior is actively observed and weighed by heaven, meaning, well, it means how partners treat one another has immediate, profound, and sometimes severe consequences. All right, Section 1, Foundations of Christian Marriage, Reciprocal Roles and Duties. To understand how a marriage can break down, we first need to look at how Dr. Akeke builds her baseline for marital harmony. The source material outlines a very clear duality when it comes to traditional marital roles. It's kind of like a two-way street. On one hand, women are called to show unwavering respect, submission, and patience. They're meant to act as a pillar of homely support, and that's even if they are fiercely financially independent or highly educated. But then, on the flip side, husbands have a massive mandate too. They're required to provide Christ-like sacrificial love and protection. And this isn't a passive job. They are explicitly called to actively groom and elevate their brides. It's this incredibly dynamic system where one partner's respect is directly met with the other partner's sacrificial nurture. Now, here is where it gets really interesting psychologically. Dr. Akeke highlights that men and women are fundamentally moved by totally different stimuli. Actually, scratch that. It's more like they operate on entirely different emotional frequencies. Men are highly visual and deeply, deeply driven by respect. In fact, if a man feels disrespected, the framework suggests his willpower and organizational thinking basically just shut down. Women, conversely, are moved by physical touch, tenderness, and words of affirmation. Something as simple as holding hands, gently rubbing her back, or just saying, "Hey, you look beautiful today," is positioned as absolutely essential fuel for a woman's emotional well-being. Moving right along to Section 2, the dynamics of intimacy, beyond the physical. Let's see exactly how these foundational duties and emotional needs intersect behind closed doors. Dr. Akeke breaks intimacy down into multiple layers, and she moves far, far beyond just the physical aspect. We're talking about openness, togetherness, deep communication, and then, finally, mutual sexual fulfillment. It's like a layered cake, right? The framework stresses that true connection requires a man to really listen when his wife pours out her heart, and for a wife to intentionally create a space of sweet fellowship. Emotional openness and active communication literally have to happen long before intimacy ever becomes physical. Which naturally brings us to this incredibly profound quote from the source: "The woman is for the man and the man is for the woman." This completely reinforces the concept of mutual benevolence and shared bodily autonomy. According to the framework, healthy marital intimacy is never, ever one-sided. It requires this deep-seated understanding that both partners belong entirely to one another, and that necessitates a huge amount of mutual respect for each other's physical and emotional needs. So, Section 3, Husbands and Sacrificial Love, the Call to Nurture. How is this mutual benevolence applied in the real world? The framework shifts its focus squarely onto the husband's profound responsibilities here. Have you ever wondered why a man is called a bridegroom? Well, according to Dr. Akeke, it's precisely because he has a lifelong duty to actually groom his bride. This isn't just about appearances. It's an overarching responsibility to mentor, support, and elevate her across all spheres of life. We're talking academic mentorship, supporting her educational goals, providing a bedrock of emotional support, ensuring financial growth, and offering spiritual leadership. If a husband refuses to nurture his wife's potential, maybe because he's insecure and fears she might stop respecting him, he is fundamentally failing his role in this framework. Nurturing her is a real game changer for the marriage. But, we have to ask, what happens when these duties are just totally ignored? That brings us to Section 4, the breakdown. dealing treacherously. Treachery is a heavy word, right? And the framework points out that it isn't just physical harm. Though, let's be super clear here. Laying hands on a spouse is called out as completely disgusting and an absolute violation. But treachery takes other forms too. It's financial control, where a husband intentionally withholds money just to punish his wife, leading to severe deprivation. It's verbal abuse that systematically destroys her willpower. It's emotional withdrawal that reduces a marriage's communication to shallow, robotic readings like, "Good morning," and "Good evening." These behaviors completely and utterly shatter that trust and respect we talked about earlier. And this leads us to the central, arguably most critical theme of the entire explainer. Section 5, Impact of a Woman's Tears, Emotional Fallout and Spiritual Weight. When a wife is mistreated and driven to shed tears of pain, the fallout is massive. The emotional impact on the home is immediate, and honestly, it's toxic. A mistreated wife can easily slip into severe depression. Dr. Akeke actually shares this deeply striking anecdote about a pastor's wife who fell into such profound isolation that she refused to bathe, she wouldn't eat, she stopped speaking to her family, and only talked about wanting to die. It's heartbreaking, and crucially, because children are highly sensitive sponges, they observe this abuse. They will actively withdraw from the offending father and attach themselves entirely to the mother. The whole family unit just fractures. But listen to this. The framework doesn't stop at the psychological fallout. There is a severe spiritual chain reaction to marital abuse. It's literally step by step. First, it starts with emotional or physical neglect by the husband. Second, the wife sheds negative tears in absolute agony. Third, and this is vital to Dr. Akeke's theology, heaven actively intercepts those tears. And fourth, this results in a direct, undeniable spiritual and financial blockage for the husband. His business stops moving, his investments disappear, and his prayers go completely unanswered. Why? Because he has placed a daughter of Zion into bondage. The crucial point here is summed up perfectly in this single line. Every tear that drops from the eyes of a woman, God takes record of it. In this framework, heaven actively hears and responds to a woman's silent suffering. A husband might think he's getting away with emotional abuse or neglect because it's happening behind closed doors, but the spiritual consequence is described as a divine sentence against him, totally stifling his progress in life. No way around it. However, to really get the whole picture of the system, we have to look at the flip side. While negative tears of pain and maltreatment trigger a heavenly sentence and major blockages, positive tears have the exact opposite effect. When a husband actively loves, nurtures, and grooms his wife, causing her to shed tears of joy, jubilations, and celebration, the framework posits that this triggers massive divine blessings. An appreciated, joyous wife who prays for her husband essentially opens the doors wide to his spiritual and financial success. It's like a superpower for the marriage. So, it's a highly structured, incredibly reciprocal system where emotional care directly dictates both spiritual and practical outcomes, which leaves us with a pretty profound thought to chew on as we wrap up today's explainer. Based on Dr. Akeke's framework, I want you to ask yourself, what is the spiritual weight of a tear in your own relationships? Are your daily actions generating blockages, or are they opening up doors of blessing for the people you love? Thank you so much for joining me to explore this fascinating material today. Keep learning, keep reflecting, and I will see you in the next explainer.